Coming up on TekThing, spring is here and Shannon's working on the digital garden. Alan Malventano joins us to talk SSDs, reusing old power supplies, and more. It's all coming up on TekThing. If you get something useful out of this episode of TekThing, please consider contributing to the show at patreon.com/TekThing. We're brought to you by viewers just like you. Thank you so much.
I'm Shannon Morse.
And I'm Patrick Norton.
And this is TekThing, where we make technology behave.
Yes, we do.
All the technology.
And actually, you've been practicing playing in dirt. You haven't followed me down the path to chicken ownership yet. Chicken husbandry. Which always sounds weird. Animal husbandry.
I have a backstory on this. I am absolutely horrible on gardening, so anything that can help me garden better, because seriously, I kill everything that I try to plant. If there's something out there, I have no green thumb whatsoever. So if there's anything in this world that can actually help me garden better and maybe save some money so that I can like plant tomatoes at home, yay, then I'm totally all for it.
I'm noticing a trend actually, and I've seen this in a lot of places, things to keep you from either overwatering your plants or underwatering your plants.
My problem is completely forgetting that I own the plant.
Yes.
And hence I don't water it whatsoever.
I've seen this happen with plants on Shannon's desk. I can only imagine what happens to plants that are outside of her home.
I found an aloe plant outside. Like it was there a year later. Anyway, long story short.
Was it an ex-aloe plant?
Luckily, it doesn't require much watering, so it survived for a year, and I completely forgot that I owned the thing.
What is a GreenIQ Smart Garden Hub?
Oh man, so this is a GreenIQ Smart Garden Hub. This thing takes the place of a home's irrigation controller. So usually you have like a whole sprinkler system hooked up and then you have a controller in the middle. So you would end up wiring this in with the cute little wires right here, and it connects to your wireless network at home so that you can wirelessly control your irrigation instead of having to be in your house like controlling it from a stupid old panel from the 1980s or something like that.
Or one of those, I mean, in most cases there's a box. It's not very smart. It doesn't, it'll, like I love that, like we're in a drought, it rained, our neighbor flooded their lawn. You know, like for 3 days in a row when we got 4 inches of rain in 4 days. It's like, water bill.
So this will connect to your wireless network, which is set up by connecting it to your router. So you take off the top piece right here, which you have to leave on so that it can waterproof itself outside. But on the bottom of it, you have your power, which of course you need power, and then you have an Ethernet jack. So you plug this straight into your router and it pairs with your home router so that it automatically has that connection. And then you can connect to it with your smartphone at that point with an app. And the app's very easy to use. I was really impressed with it. And you simply just tell it what your username and password is for the GreenIQ, and then you log in and you set it up on your wireless account at home.
So it's in the cloud.
So it's in the cloud, yeah. Everything with the GreenIQ is up in the cloud, which makes it really easy to use whenever you're like out and about as well.
So I'm having an Internet of Things moment. I have an application, water the azalea.
Water the
lemon
azalea.
tree. Does it have sensors so I know when it's actually time to water?
It does. So the really cool thing about this guy is that it works with a local weather station. So you tell it where your location is, and then it will figure out what the local weather station is. It'll find out what the weather is going to be for that day. And if it says, hey, it's supposed to rain 60% today, then it'll tell you, okay, you don't need to run your irrigation today, so let me control it for you. I'm just gonna not run the sprinklers today.
So it's guesstimating.
It's guesstimating, but it's a very educated guess based on the weather station in your area. But you can also customize that. So if you don't want it to run off weather stations, you can also use it and control it straight from the app. So if I say, well, I know that we're having a drought, but I also know that, you know,
the tomatoes are gonna die.
The tomatoes are gonna die. Like, I definitely want extra water this day. Then I can manually customize it and say, okay, I want you to run on Tuesdays at 2 o'clock for like X amount of days or whatever it might be.
I like the idea. I want to actually like plug all the sensors in and have like the water, you know, the electrically controlled water switches.
Yeah.
And then just like have amazing green stuff without wasting any water.
There you go. Yeah, that would totally work. So you can control it from iOS or Android, which is great. And you can also control it from your computer with a browser. So yay, I can use it on Linux, which is super cool. Yay. And the app lets you control different zones. So you can also change the username and password. You can set up different zones if you have like a very large garden. I just have like a backyard, so it's really easy for me to just use one zone and be good to go. But if you have several zones, you can customize that as well. It's very easy. Updates are retrieved from the GreenIQ cloud. So if this ever requires updates, you can do them through the app. You can use it on bigger gardens with 4 zones total with different settings. And it does support a few other soil control-based sensors too. So it controls the flower power, which I also have here. It's from Parrot, the drone makers, which kind of weird they did a flower power. Okay, cool. And there's also a garden lighting control that you can channel with it too, with the second wire. So that's pretty nice too. If you have like really fancy gardens that have special lighting at night or something like that, you can make it auto turn on whenever the sun goes down.
Does it include like multiple valves if you're setting up different watering zones, or is there like a single valve?
So what you would do is when you install it, usually a home irrigation has like 4 different valves.
Oh, it just replaces the existing controller.
Yeah, it just replaces it, yeah. So you don't need to replace the valves too or anything like that. You just wire it in to where the old one was.
How much is it?
It's $199 MSRP currently, and then you can find more information about that over at GreenIQ.co. Yeah, and they have tons of information over there about the other specific things that it can work with for your smart garden.
200 might sound like a lot for those of you who are really, really good at remembering to water things or not water things. But compared to the cost, like we were looking, if we just did this like little patch of lawn, because we live in a small house with a small lot, we were looking at like, I think it was going to be $200 a month. Watering, just to keep this like green patch alive.
Yeah, so they're touting like you can save 50% of your water bill, which is great. And I don't know how exact that is, but that's a lot of money.
Yeah, we're not going to save 50% of our water bill because we're constantly
watching
toddler clothes. Yeah, and we don't water because it's a drought.
Yep.
So the flower power.
Flower power.
It looks like an offensive weapon being used by a space alien who's about to rip my guts out.
It kind of does. So this little thing measures temperature with a built-in thermistor, fertilizer by measuring electrical conductivity of the soils, which means more ions equals more fertilizer because ions are in fertilizer. Kind of cool. I learned something new when I was researching this. And then moisture by dielectric permittivity, and then it also measures sunlight as well.
How dark is that corner of the yard?
How dark is it? So it connects through iOS or Android apps. There is no PC app for it, so you do have to have a smartphone via Bluetooth, not wireless. So you have to have Bluetooth too, meaning you can only get updates if you are nearby. So you can't control this if you're far away. The app does take a long time to update whenever it's first started, and the firmware updates do take a while. I had to download 2 firmware updates for this guy when I received it.
Is it rechargeable or battery powered?
It's battery powered. So it takes 3 AA batteries, which you plug in
to the stick.
Yeah, and it's water resistant, hence why it's so tight. But it comes with 1 AA battery or AAA battery, which is great. And then you simply just screw the top back on and you stick it back in your plant whenever you're ready to go. And
so basically, if I want to know what's going on in a particular area of my yard, I poke one. Can I have like a dozen of them inside the app, or?
You can. So you can set up multiples in the app, which is great. I'm not sure what the total amount is. Didn't reach that with my one, but it is weather resistant. You can use it indoor or outdoor, wherever you want. They do have a database of up to 7,000 plants that you can match it up with.
Oh, wow.
And each of those plants corresponds with and tells this how much water it needs. So if you stick this in a succulent and you don't water it for 4 months, which is way too long to keep a succulent unwatered, and it's super dry, it'll tell you, hey, this thing needs more water because it knows it's a succulent because you match it up.
Several.
I have. Even succulents, it's true. And your app will notify you of any needs that you, like if you need to move it into more sunlight or anything like that. But it doesn't tell you exactly how much sunlight you need. It'll just say, needs more sunlight or needs more water or whatever that might be. So you might just want to start with a little bit and then go from there.
Not enough, not enough, too much.
There's a green one, there's a brown one, a blue one. They're $59.99, so $60. Currently, though, you can find it for $10 off over at Parrot's website, parrot.com. So So hey,
Flower Power.
there's a coupon. And another cool perk, this one integrates with GreenIQ, which is great. I know I mentioned that before, but I love the fact that these companies are customizing them to work together.
I could have the ability to have my watering controlled based on the sensors.
You could.
I like this.
Yeah. And then the last thing, this one is not as smart, but I think it's worth talking about a little bit because it's very cool.
Because she wants to keep plants alive.
I do, and I love the fact that people are out there, companies are out there helping me with my problem because this is a sincere issue that I have.
Is it for creating seedlings?
Careful, there's water in there.
Right over the computers.
Yeah, right over the computers.
I see dirt.
So this one is $59.95. It's an indoor herb garden that holds 3 plants at one time. So you'll see there's 3 domes right here. The domes are for the greenhouse effect, keeping them watered, keeping the precipitation inside of it. I was like, what's the word?
Keeping them all humidified.
It does take a few weeks for them to start sprouting, so I don't have any sprouts yet. I haven't had it long enough, but after a couple of months, you'll receive full-size plants. This thing has a light on the top, which you can raise up and down depending on how high your plants are getting, and then you can simply cut them down or cut off the leaves that you want to use for, cooking or whatever you want.
Can you use any seedlings in this, or do you have to buy
you have to
their special
purchase their
seedlings?
special pockets.
So this is the Keurig cup of planters.
Yeah, it's like the Keurig cup of planters. That's the perfect way of explaining it. You could probably get your own, or they do sell experimental cups.
Okay.
So you can fill them with your own things, whatever you might want to experiment with.
Having a black thumb, you're going to stick to the offerings.
Yeah, I'll stick with those.
So you don't have to, the water basically, you dump the water in here and everything takes care of itself?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's
and
really cool.
it's super easy to use. There is a little iOS app. It's iOS only, which I'm very sad about, but luckily I have an iPad to test these things on, which can let you manually track your plants. Not pants. And I say manually because it doesn't get any data from the click and grow. You'll have to plug in the data to your app. So I have basil plants in here, so I went in the app and I said, I have basil and I filled up the water on this day. And then it'll notify me when I need to refill it.
So it's smart, but not necessarily smart in the Internet of Things talking to your stuff sense.
Exactly. So the garden isn't transmitting any data. The app just knows generic data about specific plants that they sell in their online store.
It should take this many days to germinate. It should take this
exactly.
many days
So if yours isn't, then you know there's a problem. Once they die, you can order new plants. They come in 3 packs for $19.95, and then again, the whole planter itself is $60 total. So a little bit pricey for the refills, but if it helps you save some money in the long run, might be worth it.
If you kill a lot of plants, that's
if you kill a lot of plants.
Plus the emotional sort of weight bringing you down. As a nature killer. Do you see yourself using any of these long term, or they're kind of like, that was nice?
Well, I'm pretty sure I have to send them all back, but I might end up purchasing my own. I really like the click and grow. I love the idea of growing your own herbs, completely unpesticides or anything like that, which is very cool to me because, I have hippie friends and they always tell me to do those kind of things. This one I can't use currently because I'm in a rental. We don't have an irrigation system. Flower Power is pretty cool. I mostly have succulents, but I still kill them, so I would probably get some use out of this.
Oh my goodness. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have a question, an idea, a thought, a suggestion, do us a favor, fire out an email to ask@TekThing.com or tweet @TekThing. We want to make sure you get every episode of TekThing, so do us a favor, subscribe. You can get the information at TekThing.com or search on iTunes, your favorite podcatcher, or of course YouTube.com/TekThing. That makes sure you get each and every episode, and if you want to take it to the next level, consider contributing to the show at Patreon.com/TekThing. You can donate however much you want. We'd love 25 cents or $1 an episode. That'd be killer. Every little bit counts, and it all adds up and keeps us keeping the show to you, which we love to do. Can't donate? No worries. Please take your time and send us questions, tips, and share the show with your friends and family. If you can give our video the thumbs up on YouTube, like our Facebook page, reviews on iTunes, it all helps keep the show growing, and that keeps the show going. Thank you so much for supporting the show.
We got a tweet from @DuckWithGlasses. I love your name. Who tweets @PatrickNorton @TekThing. Here's my @FreeNAS Team external expansion on the cheap server drive cage and secondhand PSU.
Oh my goodness.
That's cool.
Yeah, if you've never actually seen a server drive cage, we made this picture a little bit bigger. So this is the drive cage. You can see where the power supply is plugged in there. But server drive cages are basically big, giant racks for stuffing drives into servers. And all I could think was like, if you want to get your DIY on and there's just so much fun to be had with old power supplies, old PSUs. For example, because I'm unhinged, you could use a power supply. If you bridge the power supply so it'll jump it, you could use it to do like an external, like I could probably build my Rip Monster 3000 as a discrete bundle of Blu-ray drives rather than stuffing it into the world's biggest case. But for example, the Sparkfun Benchtop Power Board Kit, which essentially helps you to take a ATX power supply and convert it into an actual benchtop power supply.
That's cool.
And a lot of people, hi Instructibles. A lot of people actually do the same thing, with drills and soldering irons. By the way, do me a favor, make sure your power supply is unplugged. See all this stuff in here? If you really screw up, it can kill you. So follow the directions and make sure things are unplugged. But the idea is that you're actually going to create your own benchtop power supply. And if you don't know what a benchtop power supply is, the idea is that you have, in this case, by reusing an old ATX power supply, you can have 12 and 5 volts. That is clean and crisp. This is another one. This is actually a really nice Instructable from Magazine. Computer power supply to bench power supply adapter.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just...
That thing is gorgeous.
Look, identify the wires on the 20 or 24 pin connector.
Oh my gosh.
3.3 volts, 5 volts, ground, 5 volts, 12 volts. This is a really well-regulated source of juice. What uses 5 volts? What is that? Oh, everything that uses USB. Yeah. If you don't know about this one, or you want to actually test a power supply to make sure it's actually running, or you want to jumpstart a power supply, this is a great way to get your mother to yell at you, quite rightfully so. This direction's up at 8th Networks. Turn on PSU without motherboard, the Paperclip Trick. I've been using this for an embarrassingly long time. Look, kids, it's a paper clip or a piece of wire.
Oh, yes, it
and you
is.
find the 2024 pin connector and you jump it. And that's basically when you hit the power button on your computer what it's connecting to.
Oh my goodness.
And while we're in there, if you want to get fancy, there's the AntMiner ATX Power Supply Jumper Switch and LED light for PSU and Bitcoin miners, which is basically, look at that, an ATX power supply plug with a switch on it. And one more, the Antrons 24-pin ATX EPS PSU jump starter bridge. And there's another one in there that sells, it's like this, but it sells for like $19 because they wired a switch in. Yeah, that was my reaction. But you know what?
Okay, that's cool.
Sometimes people see a need and they fill it.
I kind of want to just
fill a need.
I just want to build one just because it's a possibility.
We should build benchtop power supplies. In any case, since I haven't said it in a while, reduce, reuse, recycle.
Yes.
You don't have to hug a tree, just keep something out of the dump, people. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been entirely too long. Alan Malventano's back from PCPer.com, the resident storage expert at PCPer. Alan, welcome back to TekThing, man.
Thanks. Good to be here.
It's been kind of a crazy couple months. First of all, we're seeing 10 terabyte drives for enterprise, and Western Digital is now dropping 8 terabyte drives for the home. What's going on with that?
Yeah, Western Digital 8 terabyte red drives. They kind of held off on the 8 terabyte model for a while, and it looks like what they were actually waiting on was for them to finish integrating with HGST, which they kind of like are grouped up now. They wanted to do reds with HGST's HelioSeal tech, which is like the helium-filled hard drives.
And those have been around in the enterprise side of things for a while. HGST being Hitachi, being the hard disk group that was formerly part of IBM. But the helium drives are known for being incredibly long-lasting and incredibly expensive.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think we have like enough years of people using these all over the place to say for sure, like what their actual failure rates are going to be and whatnot. But I would imagine they've been pretty good so far because HGST first did a 6 terabyte. They just called it a HE6. And that was their enterprise helium drive. That came out a few years back, and I haven't heard any widespread, oh my goodness, the helium leaked out and all my data is gone or anything like that. So it seems to be somewhat proven now, especially if it's to the point where Western Digital can stick it in a regular consumer drive. Right?
Is the point of using helium that it is an inert gas and you're basically sealing off the interior of the drive?
What they're really looking for is a lighter gas.
Oh.
Right. Inert, it also helps.
Okay.
And I don't know, hydrogen kind of does bad things with sparks, right? So inert helps because it's going to be inside of an electronic device, right? But the fact that it's lighter means that there's less friction, there's less resistance, just less air resistance, right?
Got it.
If you had helium everywhere, your car would drive much faster, right?
Turning
so
purple and
yeah.
dying thing would be an issue, but
Yeah, that would be bad. Same goes for the heads. The heads actually can fly lower, right?
Oh, wow.
So that means the heads can be closer to the disk, and you can help. That also helps you increase your density, and also the reduction in air resistance means they can do other things like put 7 platters in a drive, which usually they can't because the platters have to be at least so thick.
got it.
So they can make thinner platters, fit more in there, higher density, just kind of like win all around, basically.
In terms of an 8 terabyte drive, is that going to be a compatibility problem for a lot of NASs out there?
I think pretty much any NAS that can handle drives over 2 terabytes should be able to handle anything up to, well, let's just say 8 is probably not the limit. Yeah, I mean, to get to the next power of 2 kind of limit thing, it's definitely a lot of sectors, and we're not close to that yet.
Is the cost per gigabyte, I mean, assuming you aren't in a situation where you need all of the gigabytes, is the cost for the 8 terabyte RAIDs prohibitive, or is it pretty reasonable?
No, it seems to be right in line with running cost per gig of other models, even in the lower capacities.
Nice.
It's just a matter of, obviously the cost does go up when you have that many of those terabytes in one
Right.
drive, right? But proportionally, it seems to be about around the same.
Nice. So,
Yeah.
an article you did back in March, Samsung 850 EVO V1 and V2 compared. You finally got a chance to look at 32 and 48 layer flash, the 48 layer or V3 flash being what's showing up in the 2nd gen 850 EVO drives. You had some concerns that there would be a slowdown on Samsung's 850 when they moved from the 32 to 48 layer flash. What did the benchmarks on that look like?
So they sent us the 1 terabyte model. The concerns I had about drives possibly being slower were in the smaller capacities. So because basically they're doubling the capacity per die, but that means that there's less dies in an SSD for a given total capacity of that drive, right? So if you double the die size, you have half the number of dies.
This is good.
now, yeah, that is good. It's good for you can fit more dies in there and double the capacity more easily and whatnot. But on the lower capacities, you might run into an issue where each die can only transfer so fast.
Got it.
Right? So, and you can't have like a 1 die SSD that goes full SATA speed, for example. They just don't go that quickly, especially on writes. So as you reduce the die count, because you're trying to sell a smaller capacity SSD with higher capacity dies in it, you might run into issues where the SATA speed is actually higher than that SSD would go, right? Now, we compared the 1 terabyte models because those are the ones they've sent us. I'm working on reviews of smaller capacity models now that we've seen them floating around more easily and we can get our hands on them. But at least in the 1 terabyte capacity model, even though there's half the number of dies, we did some kind of really in-depth new testing that we're working on called a Latency Percentile, and these new ones were actually faster.
Oh, wow.
There were less latency involved in writing to those SSDs, and at least in the 1 terabyte model, they're able to saturate SATA reads or writes, even when the buffer is full, like the SLC buffer is full, because EVOs have SLC and TLC flash. So even writing straight to TLC still saturates SATA. That's probably not going to be the case with the smaller capacities, but they're still going to be pretty speedy drives.
Speedy is good. When you talk about, did you say the new benchmark you work on latency percentile?
Yeah. It's a latency. We get this data from the SSD test run, and basically every single I/O is timed.
Right.
So if you have an SSD doing millions of IOPS or something like that, we're actually logging every single one now.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's kind of a crazy thing to try to do. And it also gives you a whole bunch of data that you need to comb through afterwards. Well, we take all that, condense it into a latency distribution plot. We tend to not focus on that because it's a bit hard to read, but you can take those numbers and translate them into what we call latency percentile. And all that is just, he's got his hand up.
You're good.
Oh, I didn't know if you had a question. You're asking the teacher a question.
Haven't lost me yet.
Yeah. So the end result is you end up with a plot where the line starts on the left at the bottom, and then all of a sudden you will hit a cluster of where all of your IOs took place as far as how long they took.
Okay.
And that amount of them is it provided that all of them fit within a nice narrow band, you'll end up with a nice vertical line where you basically the plot will go from the bottom to the top, from 0 to 100%. If it doesn't, like say it goes to 90 and then starts to kind of taper off, that just means that there's extra IOs in there. Some percentage of them took longer, right? So the idea is you can see. Bad. Yeah, and it's something you want to see because that's what translates to things that make your system actually run slower, right? Pretty much everybody else's benchmarks that are run, or any other benchmark utility for that matter, they will just give you the average latency, or they might give you the maximum latency.
Right.
Maximum doesn't tell you a lot because you could have a single IO out of millions that just took a little longer because, say, the system just did something else for a split second. Windows does multitask; it does other things. So that isn't really a valuable thing. You really need to know all of the IOs and how long they all took and plot them. So that's what we're doing.
Very cool. Do you expect to see different latency percentiles across different brands or different I/O controllers?
Yeah, we actually do see that. And with our testing, I think in the first piece where we covered that was in the 950 Pro review that we did. That's where I introduced that testing, and I actually had a single plot which had like a random selection of different SSDs, and you can see each one had its own line. It's just kind of like, this is how long this one takes. For all of its IOs, and I even included a really old SLC, like a 32 gig G-Skill SSD, like back when they were just coming out on the market.
Right.
And that one was a nice vertical line, but it was like 2 orders of magnitude slower than the modern SSDs. And then even on that same plot, again, I even was able to plot hard drives.
Oh wow!
Which has a much longer kind of a S-curve sweep thing because it's the time that the head has to go to different parts of the platter. Right.
Oh, that's crazy.
But yeah, with this new testing, we can kind of compare everything to everything else, and it all seems to work.
One last question before we go. What's your picks for SSDs these days?
Picks for SSDs?
Because we've seen a lot of brands popping up. Do you still recommend the Samsung 850s?
Yeah, I'm still real happy on 850 Evos. Wish their pricing would come down a little bit more now that they're able to cram more capacity into each one of those dies. And I think that's pretty much going to happen.
Right.
We already see sales prices. They dip down to like 30 cents per gig, or occasionally even lower. And there are other SSDs out on the market that will run around the same price, but the performance 9 times out of 10 is just not even close.
Got it.
That's the thing, right? It's like somebody might manage to beat them on price, but then it's like either an unproven controller design, or it's just, the drive just does not perform nearly as well as what Samsung has managed to do. So at least for the moment, they still kind of have the corner on this, price for performance and a lot of capacity to boot kind of thing.
It's not a bad thing. It's amazing to watch the prices come down. I just want to see the NVMe and the U.2 form factor SSDs come down just a little bit more. Staring at an empty slot in my motherboard.
Yeah. Even the 950 Pro, which is Samsung's NVMe part, which is M.2, it still stays a little bit pricey, but they kind of consider that like their premium device for storage. So I think they're going to leave the pricing a little bit high. And not only that, but it is actually a Pro model. It doesn't do any kind of TLC or SLC caching. It's just straight MLC. There is a possibility we're going to see like an Evo version of an NVMe PCIe device at some point, but haven't heard anything yet.
Good news or bad news? Well, nothing. If you bought yesterday, you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
If you're waiting for a better price, maybe not so much. PCPro.com is a website, ladies and gentlemen, to find all of Alan's testing and writing. Anything you can tease that's coming up?
Just working on more reviews. I'm trying to get that Drobo Elite review out the door. So we teased this a couple weeks back, which was Drobo Elite, and we filled it with 8 terabyte helium-filled reds.
Oh my goodness.
And we've been kind of playing around with that a little bit. That's a lot of capacity in a relatively small box.
That's 64 terabytes minus the space that's lost. Wow.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, PCPro.com. Stay tuned to find out the results of that massive collection of storage. Thanks, Alan.
Thanks.
We got another tweet from @Maletic who wrote, @TekThing, Hackintosh build, cheap Hackintosh hardware build equal to Mac Mini, no size restriction to Mac Mini size advice. Thanks. Keep thingin'.
You should have t-shirts that say keep thingin'.
Keep thingin'.
That and back that.
Keep TekThingin'.
Keep TekThingin'.
I feel Southern when I say that.
Y'all keep TekThing now, you hear?
Anyway, moving
Want
on.
some sweet tea? Oh my goodness. Okay, number one, period. End of discussion. First place I go when I'm thinking about Hackintosh builds, TonyMacX86.com.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. This is an incredible resource. If for no other reason than A, they tell you how to do it and give you the tools you need to do it, but B, the buyer's guide. Click. Because the big thing about building a Hackintosh, for example, a custom Mac Mini, is that you have a motherboard that will actually work. And they have, oh look, the full list of motherboards. These are all the motherboards that will work with OS X. If you don't have one of these motherboards, it might work, but I would not bet on it. And I'm a betting man occasionally. But there's a long list of basically parts and ideas, and they tell you what you can use. Because the thing about making a Hackintosh work is that you really need to use stuff that OS X is comfortable with. If you don't, you're going to have troubles. If TonyMacX86.com, by the way, at TonyMacX86 on Twitter, seems like too much, definitely go read the always up-to-date guide to building a Hackintosh OS X El Capitan, which is up on lifehacker.com.
Awesome.
And this is a really nice walkthrough. What is a Hackintosh exactly? A Hackintosh is simply any non-Apple hardware that has been made or hacked to run Mac OS X. Can I Hackintosh my laptop? How does this guide work? Basically, yeah, picking the right hardware.
Good long list of information.
Yeah, and it's very, 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 very digestible, which is a hallmark of Lifehacker. It's why we love them so much. So those are two good places to start. You do not have to spend a lot of money. You can if you want to, but I would start there. For example, our Patreon build for May is a $500 PC that with the right motherboard choice would be ideal for your project if $500 isn't too much. Figure out what hardware you get. You might have everything you need except for a motherboard that is compatible, and if you do, just buy a motherboard that's compatible and build from there. Those are the two, Tony Mac X86 and Lifehacker's always up-to-date guide to building a Hackintosh.
Awesome.
I'm going to stop talking now. Well, except for one thing. Dennis emailed ask@TekThing.com. Hey guys, long-time listener, first-time caller, big fan of you both from Tech TV and Evil Server days. So, Evil Server, I've decided to get organized with backing up my photos. Yes! I've decided with your advice to use CrashPlan for my automated backup. My problems come from how I should organize my pictures. I started to divide the pictures into subfolders like graduations, birthday, etc., but it now has gotten out of hand. Is there a better way to organize pictures? Dennis.
I love this question.
I mostly suck at organizing photos, but I personally have discovered that I need to organize them by the date they were shot on. And then if I can add in like EXIF data that says trip to Yosemite, Seamus's umpteenth birthday, that's about as much organizing as I need.
Yeah.
You may have a different path.
I've attempted software years ago and it didn't work for me because it would end up jumbling it via the number that came out of the digital camera, and sometimes that number is incorrect. Or if I had already copied pictures over, it's the same number, and then you get duplicates in the same folder, or you end up with it wiping your original photo. So I do a lot of my photo organization completely manually, and I have done this since 2001 or 2000, whenever I started getting digital cameras for real, and I do by year, and then I do a subfolder by month, and then I do a subfolder by event. And that is my thing. And then for the event, so for month, I title it 01 January, 02 February, and then inside of that subfolder, I do 01 CES, which is the first event in January, 02 sister's birthday, or whatever it might be in January. So everything is in order from year, month, and then event.
If an event is across 2 months, do you put it in the first month or do you copy it?
First month.
Okay.
Yeah. Unless it's like the last day and it's something that happens for 4 days, and then I'll just be like, okay, I'll put it in the date that was the longest lasting date.
My wife has a master's degree in library science and is a cataloger, so that's why I always ask questions like that, because
smart,
she gets super granular.
The other thing I have found, because I have started taking raw photos, because I'm getting into photography, you probably saw my build video if you're a patron, is I will let Lightroom do the organization for me. I name a category category. So I name like based on event again, and then I'll name a whole category of photos, and I'll let it transfer new JPEGs that I can upload after I've edited them in Lightroom into this new folder for me. And it does it automatic based on the date that the picture was taken. That's how it categorizes everything, so it works pretty well, but I still keep my own copy in my own event folder. So a lot of it is manually.
It seems like once you get organized, it's much easier moving forward, but getting over that hump of like 8 years of digital photos is a nightmare.
That's why I've been doing this since like 2000. And I categorize them maybe like once a month, or when I'm bored and I'm watching Netflix or something like that. It's pretty easy.
Year, month, event, or year, month, date, event?
Year, month, event.
There you have it, ladies and
That's
gentlemen.
it. Yeah.
Hopefully this helps you. Oh my goodness. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, once in a while, put down the phone, step away from the screen, close the laptop, except I need to show something on it, and do something analog, like try a new recipe.
Ooh, recipe. That's a great idea. I never cook.
You should cook more.
I should.
You might eventually enjoy it.
I can make spaghetti.
That's a big jump. One of my, I actually really, really love this book. The 4-Hour Chef, The Simple Path to Cooking Like a Pro, Learning Anything and Living the Good Life. It's Timothy Ferriss. People love him, people hate him. I think he's a fascinating human being. And he has some lovely thoughts on trying new recipes and on learning in general.
Does it take 4 hours to read?
No, you will not be done with it in 4 hours, unless you hate it, in which case you may fling it across the room in 20 minutes. I still can, I got this when it came out in 2012, and I still sit down and read it every few weeks.
Oh, that's awesome.
And not, ladies and gentlemen, for the squirrel recipes. Although there is a great squirrel recipe in there. What, you've never had squirrel?
I probably have. I lived in Missouri.
And generally speaking, people tell you in Missouri if they're feeding you squirrel. I'm just saying. I'm Badder Norton.
I'm Shannon Morse.
We'll see you next week on TekThing. I think it's like a rule, like your grandmother teaches you, if you're feeding squirrel, you have to let people know.
Yeah, I think
well,
so.
actually, if you're a grandchild, you probably don't.
I tried a lot of strange foods in my day.
Marty.
Yeah.
Have you ever had rattlesnake?
Yes. I don't remember it. I was a child.
Not much taste to it. It's mostly like little tiny shreds.
Deer jerky?
Deer jerky's good.
Oh, man, it's amazing.
Venison stew is really good. Elk.
That's good stuff.
Elk.
Never had elk.
Elk's really good.
I've had frog legs. By the way, before I forget, if you are planning to go to my thing in Tokyo, Japan, my meetup in Tokyo, Japan, make sure to go to snubsy.com/blog and recheck the address. We switched addresses to a new place in Roppongi. Roppongi.
Is that in Tokyo?
I hope you lasted this long, because if you end up at the other place, nobody's gonna be there.
What's the website to check for that?
snubsy.com/blog.
Blog.